One of the most common questions that circulate around in our industry is, what is the difference between concept art and VisDev or visual development? Like, what are these terms? Concept design, concept art, visual development, blue sky, keyframes, blah, 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 blah. Even when I discuss this with my friends, the answer is hazy. But let me explain why, and you'll understand why. Like, what are these terms? Concept design, concept art, visual development, blue sky, keyframes, blah, 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 blah. Even when I discuss this with my friends, the answer is hazy. But let me explain why, and you'll understand why all these terms kind of blend together. First of all, when we look at the production of a typical movie or game, it begins with an idea. Then it moves into a phase known as blue sky, where a lot of paintings and just general kind of brainstorm work is done to envision what the final product could kind of look like. Typically, these are incredibly wild and can be very different to what the actual final product is, because at this stage, different artists are trying different things to see if the art director likes or wants to settle with a particular style or aesthetic. Afterwards, it moves into pre-production, where now we're closer to establishing an actual style guide and usually a pretty solid script. So artists are asked to tackle what specific places would look like, or what the final product could kind of be, different locations. And it gives the director, producer, and 3D modelers an idea of how much they're going to need to build for the actual movie. Now, blue sky and pre-production really flow into each other, and depending on the studio, sometimes they can be the same thing. Typically, the smaller your team, the less time that they have for blue sky, and so they just kind of call it pre-production. Typically, as a rule of thumb, blue sky is usually much more crazy and experimental in comparison to pre-production VisDev, because at this point, not that much has been sorted out and artists can crank out stuff from the wildest part of their imagination. For example, the amazing blue sky art that was done for Tangled include art by Claire Keane and Craig Mullins. Claire Keane depicts Rapunzel as a realistic girl for one of the blue sky paintings, which obviously Disney probably wouldn't go for because Disney wants a much more cartoon animated look. So this is definitely considered more towards blue sky, because this is kind of a big but what if. After pre-production is done, now we move into production, where we're actually building all of the 3D models, we're doing lighting, and we're setting up cameras, and we're taking shots. The concept art now is not really big paintings anymore, but rather they are sheets that tell the 3D modeler exactly how to do something. In video games and animation, this can involve a lot of line art, as that's the clearest indication to 3D modelers as to where to make their cuts, bevels, and such. We call this production art because it's specifically for, well, production. As you can see, for Elsa's dress, every single little detail needs to be thought out and designed and put onto an orthographic-like template so that a 3D modeler can then take it and model it. Additionally, during production, you can also be a matte painter or background painter, where you physically have to paint in, well, as you guessed it, the background. It's very costly for a 3D modeler to build everything in an entire scene, so it's much easier for someone to paint in the illusion of a bigger scene. Although, typically these days, matte painting for live-action movies also has a lot of 3D involved in it. And in animation, well, without background painting, there can be no setting whatsoever. In live-action movies, film, and video games, you would be known as a matte painter, but in animation, you are a background painter, because this is literally going to be what the audience sees on screen one for one. And now finally, post-production. This is where visual effects come in. And let me just super quickly add some arrows so that you can see the timeline. Sometimes concept artists are still needed to help visualize what some of those effects could look like, but it's more rare. Here are VFX samples done by the once again incredible Ryan Lang for Doctor Strange. Technically, this art could still be made during production and even during the blue sky phase. So it's not really actual VFX work. An actual form of VFX would be taking a scene from the movie, adding in and compositing in the items, and recreating that shot to make it look as if it was part of the movie. That's what actual VFX does. Although sometimes Someone needs to concept the VFX. Concept artists will be brought on. The timeline is quite fluid. Every project has a different timeline. There is really no single formula, and all the art you do here, except for matte painting and background painting, is considered concept art. However, when you get more specific, the work you do in production, such as ref sheets, these could be considered prop design, and then you can get character design, or you can get environment design. However, the paintings specifically that you do around the production and pre-production time, this is a gray zone because it can be considered either visual development, keyframe painting, or just general concept art. This is because every single studio has their own definition and calls these paintings a different name because for each production, these paintings will have different purposes. Blue sky paintings are only a sneak peek of what the final movie or game could potentially look like. Sometimes an artist is asked to make specific keyframes of moments of what will happen in the movie and is trying to emulate as close to a final frame in the movie as possible. Other times, it's to establish a location very well, and is almost borderline environment design, but is meant to show off the world. So you see, there is no dictionary of concept art out there that says, okay, you are prop design, and you are concept design, and you are visual development. So there's no scientific terms, but rather these terms are kind of thrown all over the place. However, typically the term visual development is used within the animation industry. You'll see the term VisDev within animation a lot. The opposite for video games, especially for hyper-realistic games. They typically stick with the term concept art and concept design to describe the paintings done for pre-production. My theory is that someone in animation called these paintings, like these general pre-production paintings, visual development, and it just stuck. And the same thing for video games. So when you're in either industry, you kind of just hop back and forth between these two terms. Stylized video games, however, usually use a healthy amount of both terms from my experience. Essentially, in a nutshell, it depends on the production and the team that you're on, but the work should really all be the same. That's why the answer is so gray, because it's always a version of it depends. Alright, now enough of talking about dictionary terms. We're going to focus on how to actually create one of these paintings, which is a much harder feat than merely memorizing words and terminology. Today, since we're targeting a more animated style, we'll dub this as the VisDev lesson. As we progress further and further into the course, you'll soon discover that we'll discuss the thinking and concepts less, but dive more into the specifics of how to execute these pieces. So basically, in a nutshell, less talking from me, less lecture, and more doing. Best part of these videos, though, is that you can play them over and over and over again however much you want. You know, sometimes when you just blink in your class, and the teacher has finished half the painting in that one blink, and you feel like you literally turned your head away for half a second. Thankfully, you will never run into that here, because you can just play my voice over and over and over again. Alright, let's get started.